Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. You guys have given us some really interesting stuff to dig into this time.
Yeah, some fascinating tech to explore.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about capsules in the Eve universe, and you've given us some great source material for this. Excerpts from Capsules, Technology, Variations in Construction in Eve, and also the Capsule EVE universe. So we're going to be kind of pulling out the coolest, the most interesting bits from those sources and hopefully give you that like aha, kind of feeling like, oh wow, I didn't know that kind of a thing.
I think it's a great choice for a deep dive because, the capsule it's such a pivotal piece of technology in the Eve universe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not just some, sci-fi gadget. It really did transform human civilization in a very profound way.
So let's unpack that a little bit. What makes it such a game changer? I mean, obviously we all know, capsuleers can walk away from exploding ships, but what is it about the capsule that's so fundamentally different and changes everything?
Well, you got to think of it this way. For centuries, the biggest hurdle for humanity was just the sheer danger of space travel, right? I mean, it's a hostile environment out there. But to thrive as a species, we needed to expand. We needed to explore, and the capsule made that possible. The capsule made space travel survivable on a level that was never thought possible before.
And that leads us to the Empyrean Age, right? That pivotal moment in Eve history.
Exactly. YC 105. That's when capsule technology and cloning technology finally merged, and that marked the beginning of the Empyrean Age. And I bet it was quite a sight to behold. I mean, imagine being on a planet and looking up and seeing these, seemingly immortal capsuleers commanding starships. I mean, talk about awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to forget that perspective, right? When you're up here in space all the time, you kind of forget what it must look like to the people down on the planets looking up. But, speaking of early days, the sources mention some early struggles with capsule technology, so it wasn't all, sunshine and warp drives at first.
Not at all. I mean, those early prototypes were really rough around the edges, to say the least. Pretty hostile to the human body, which isn't surprising considering the Jovian origins of the tech.
The Jovians gave us capsule tech.
Well, they gifted it to us, actually. The Jovian Directorate just handed over the blueprints to a Caldari megacorporation. No strings attached. A real turning point for humanity. But the thing is, those early capsules didn't support neural data transfer or clone reanimation. So if your capsule got destroyed, you were just as dead as any other pilot.
That's a far cry from immortality. No wonder there were all those, horror stories and a stigma around capsules back then. People were essentially strapping themselves into, high-tech coffins.
Yeah, they had every right to be skeptical. I mean, Ishikoni, the corporation developing this technology, they faced an uphill battle. The public perception was that capsules were death traps, not vessels of potential.
Okay, so how did this thing go from death trap to symbol of immortality? Clearly something major had to change.
It was advancements in cloning technology. That was the turning point. As cloning became more reliable and, more importantly, affordable, the possibility of combining it with capsule tech really emerged.
So that's where the transneural burn scanner, the TBSI, comes in, the precursor to the TABIs we know today.
Precisely. The TBSI paved the way for the TEDIS, the system that allows for consciousness transfer when a capsule is destroyed. It was a game changer.
And then Concord stepped in and made cloning contracts mandatory for all capsuleers. So it sounds like they were trying to find that balance between safety regulations and respecting capsuleer freedom.
Yeah.
Did that cause any controversy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were a lot of concerns about individual liberty and the ethics of cloning. It was a really complex issue. But ultimately, the combination of reliable cloning and the TBs, that's what made the capsule truly viable. And that's what ushered in a new age of space exploration and, of course, warfare.
Okay, let's peel back the layers a little bit and get into the capsule's anatomy. It's like having a spaceship within a spaceship. And you've given us these sources that go into amazing detail, so let's dive in.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Layer upon layer protection. Each one designed with a specific purpose in mind.
All right, starting from the outside, we've got that tough outer hull. And the source mentions a 100-millimeter layer of, get this, para-aramid carbon fiber impregnated titanium diborite armor plating. Is that as tough as that sounds?
Oh, it's incredibly strong. I mean, imagine standard diborite armor. This stuff has 10 times the ballistic stopping power at the same thickness.
Wow, okay. Then we've got the expansion gap and the pressure-sealed inner hull, all designed to absorb those heavy impacts. It's like a high-tech onion with layers of protection.
It is a very apt analogy. And at the center of it all, we reach the ovum, the capsuleer's chamber. This is where things get really interesting.
You mean because of the infamous pod goo?
Yeah.
Come on, we can't talk capsules without mentioning the pod goo.
Of course not. The technical term is an oxygen-rich, nanosaturated, breathable, fluorocarbon-derived suspension solution. But yeah, pod goo definitely has a better ring to it.
So picture this. You're nestled inside the ovum, this inner sanctum of the capsule, and you're surrounded by this pod goo, this liquid that's keeping you alive and safe. It's pretty wild, right?
It is. And it's not just for show. I mean, this fluid does a lot. It protects the pilot from the intense G-forces of space travel. It provides oxygen and nutrients. And it even has antibacterial properties. It's a multi-purpose marvel.
All right, let's move on to the systems that make this whole thing tick. We're talking some seriously advanced technology here.
Absolutely. So let's start with the power source, the graviton reactor. Think of it as a miniaturized version of the reactor you'd find in a Harpy-class frigate.
Wow. So we've got pocket-sized power, essentially. And then there are these scalar semi-organic capacitor banks, which handle the energy storage.
Those capacitor banks are critical. They store a massive amount of energy, enough to power the capsule's propulsion systems for both sublight travel and warp jumps.
It's mind-boggling to think about the energy needed to propel a capsule through the vastness of space. Okay, so we've got the power, the storage, but what about the system that ensures a capsuleer's consciousness survives, even if things go very, very wrong? The TBS, right?
Yes, the transneural echo burn scanner, or TDS. It's constantly monitoring the capsuleer's vitals and the environment within the capsule. And if it detects a critical situation like a hull breach, for example, it triggers a rapid chain of events.
A rapid chain of events that, if I recall correctly, leads to a very swift end for the capsuleer.
No, that's right, but it's a necessary step to ensure the integrity of the neural data.
Okay, so walk us through how this works. It all happens so fast.
It does. So when the TBS is triggered, it performs a deep neural scan of the capsuleer's brain, capturing the state of every neuron. It's like taking a high-resolution snapshot of your consciousness at that precise moment.
It's amazing that something as complex as consciousness can be captured like that. And then that data is transmitted to the cloning facility faster than light.
Exactly. And that's where the capsuleer's consciousness is transferred to a waiting clone. They wake up memories intact, except for the moments leading up to their, well, temporary demise.
It's like death, but not as we know it. So the TBS is essentially the heart of this whole system. But how does the capsuleer actually control the ship? What's the interface like?
Well, that's where the Neural Interface Array, or NIA, comes into play. It's a marvel of bioengineering neural jacks grafted directly to the capsuleer's spinal cord. They intercept those bioelectrical signals from the brain and translate them into commands for the capsule and ultimately the starship.
So it's mind control, but on a whole other level.
It's a seamless integration of human and machine. The capsuleer becomes one with their ship controlling every system with the power of thought.
Incredible. We've also got this thing called the External Interfacing System, or EIS. What's its role in all of this?
Think of the EIS as the communication hub between the capsule and the starship. It manages that massive flow of data back and forth, making sure the capsuleer has full control.
So it's the pipeline for all those commands and sensory feedback, but I find it interesting that the EIS doesn't have access to the 2Bs.
Right, that's a crucial safety measure. You don't want any rogue signals accidentally triggering the TBs. It needs to be isolated.
Makes sense. It's all about protecting that precious neural data. Okay, let's talk about where the capsule lives inside the ship. The capsule chamber, aka the tank. It sounds like the capsule's own personal fortress.
That's a good way to put it. It's the most secure location on any capsuleer vessel. Deep within the ship's structure, heavily armored and accessible only through a single heavily guarded causeway.
But the sources say it's exposed to vacuum. Why would they do that?
It's all about security and creating a stable environment for the capsule's systems. Remember, the capsule is the most valuable asset on board, and vacuum exposure helps regulate temperature and pressure.
So they're not taking any chances. It must be quite the journey to get into this high-security chamber.
Oh, it is. Imagine this. You're approaching the tank through a single causeway. There are multiple blast doors, security checkpoints. It's designed to prevent any unauthorized intrusion. They're serious about protecting the capsule and, of course, the capsuleer inside.
And inside that capsule, you're immersed in that breathable pod goo, the stuff of both nightmares and scientific breakthroughs. It's still mind-blowing to me that someone can breathe liquid.
It does seem counterintuitive, but it's actually a highly effective way to provide life support in space. The liquid regulates pressure and temperature, and that nanopatriated solution, it delivers oxygen and nutrients directly to your bloodstream.
It's like a portable ecosystem keeping the capsuleer alive in even the most hostile conditions.
Precisely. The pod goo is another testament to the ingenuity of capsule tech, a self-contained life support system all in a compact package.
Now, I've talked about the capsule's defenses, its life support, but what about its offensive capabilities? Does the capsule itself pack any heat?
No, the capsule's role is purely defensive. It's a lifeboat, a control center. Its purpose is to keep the capsuleer alive and in control of their ship. It's not designed for direct combat.
Okay, so no laser beams shooting out of a capsule. But what happens when the situation calls for a quick exit? We touched on the emergency ejection process earlier, but I'm curious about the details.
It's pretty traumatic. When the ship sends a distress signal, the capsule springs into action. The retaining clamps release the control umbilicus detaches, and the capsule is ejected from the ship.
Like a torpedo.
Essentially. It's a violent but necessary maneuver. The capsule needs to escape the doomed starship as quickly as possible.
It's remarkable that the capsule can withstand such a forceful ejection.
It's a testament to its durability. Those multiple layers of armor and internal shock absorption systems are all there to protect the capsuleer even in the most extreme situations.
The capsule is the ultimate life insurance in the dangerous world of Eve. So we've covered a lot of ground here, the history, the anatomy, the systems that make it all work. But we also know the capsule has gone through several iterations, right? The Mk1, Mk2, and Mk3. Each one brought some key improvements. What was driving these advancements?
I'd say it's a combination of technological progress and, let's face it, the demands of the capsuleer lifestyle. These folks are pushing the limits out there, so the tech needs to keep up. The Mk1 was a groundbreaking achievement, but it did have limitations.
Yeah, the sources mention a single capacitor bank and a less efficient reactor compared to later models.
Right. Those were areas that needed improvement.
Yeah.
So along comes the Mk2 with twin capacitor banks and a more powerful reactor, more energy capacity and stability, but it actually had a pretty short lifespan.
Why was that? If it was an improvement, you'd think it would stuck around longer.
Well, it seems capsule technology was evolving at a rapid pace. The Mk3, with its redesigned reactor, more efficient decanting system, and improved user interface, was already in development.
So the Mk2 was a bridge to even better things, and the Mk3 seems to be the most user-friendly design yet.
Yes, it sounds like there was a real focus on making the experience more comfortable and less, well, traumatic for the capsuleer.
That makes sense. After all, you're literally being decanted into a new body. Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's talk about the business side of capsules. Who's making these things, and how does a capsuleer get their hands on one?
Capsule manufacturing is big business in Ease. You have licensed corporations supplying capsules to insurance companies to fulfill those cloning contracts we talked about. You also have legitimate retailers selling upgrades and replacements. It's a tightly regulated industry for the most part.
But we've also heard whispers of a darker side to this business, a black market for modified capsules.
Ah, yes, the underbelly of any advanced technology. It's a dangerous game driven by the pursuit of an edge of pushing beyond the norms. While legitimate manufacturers follow strict regulations, the black market thrives on breaking the rules.
Okay, I'm hooked. What kind of modifications are we talking about here?
Well, that's a story for part 2 of our deep dive. We'll delve into the specifics of black market modifications, the risks involved, and the ethical dilemmas they raise. It's going to get interesting.
Welcome back. Last time we dug into all the details about capsule technology and Eve, the history, the anatomy, the crazy systems that make it all work. We even touched on the business side of things, the legitimate manufacturers, and we kind of hinted at this black market for modified capsules. But now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty of those black market modifications. I'm ready for some juicy details.
Well, information about these modifications is hard to come by. It's a secretive world. But we can make some educated guesses based on what we know about capsule engineering and the motivations behind these enhancements.
Yeah, so the sources mention combat performance boosters and intravenous delivery systems being incorporated into some black market capsules. What are we talking about here? Is this like giving a capsuleer super soldier serum?
It's not quite that dramatic, but it's definitely pushing the limits. I mean, capsuleers are already pushing their bodies and minds to the edge in combat. So imagine adding unregulated substances to the mix. It's a risky game.
But I bet there are some capsuleers out there who are willing to take that risk, especially if it gives them an edge in combat. What other modifications are rumored to exist?
Well, speed and agility enhancements are high on the list. Imagine tweaking the capsule's propulsion systems to achieve even faster acceleration or sharper maneuvering. It could be the difference between life and death in a dogfight.
Yeah, those split-second reactions can be crucial out there. I've also heard rumors of modified NIAs as well. Something about enhancing the neural interface? What's the goal there?
The rumors suggest that these modifications aim to speed up reaction times or increase the bandwidth for controlling the ship. It's like overclocking the human brain, but with much higher stakes.
It sounds incredibly risky. These procedures aren't being done in a sterile hospital environment, are they?
Definitely not. The black market operates outside of any regulatory oversight. So these procedures would be incredibly dangerous, with a high chance of complications or even permanent damage.
So it's a high-risk, high-reward scenario. But I have to ask, what about modifications to the capsule's defenses? Could someone make themselves tougher to kill?
There are rumors of reinforced armor plating and even experimental shield technologies being integrated into black market capsules. It makes sense. Survival is paramount in the world of Eve.
It seems like a logical step for a capsuleer involved in dangerous activities, but I imagine there are risks involved in messing with the capsule's core systems.
Absolutely. Tampering with the delicate balance of a capsule's systems can have catastrophic consequences. A slight miscalculation could lead to a very permanent death.
So it's a gamble, a game of chance with life or death consequences. But how do these black market capsules even get into circulation? It's not like they're being sold on the open market.
It's a complex network, shrouded in secrecy. We're talking rogue manufacturers, smugglers, discreet brokers operating in the shadows. They're trying to stay one step ahead of Concord, who are doing everything they can to crack down on these operations.
It sounds like a constant cat-and-mouse game, but I can see why Concord would be concerned. These modifications not only endanger the capsuleer themselves, but they also threaten the balance of power in New Eden.
It's a reminder that even in a technologically advanced society, there will always be those who exploit the loopholes for their own gain. The pursuit of power and the willingness to bend the rules seem to be constants in human nature.
It makes you wonder, with the capsule essentially granting immortality, how does that change a capsuleer's perspective on risks, on warfare, on life itself?
That's a fascinating question. Imagine a world where death is no longer the ultimate end, but merely a temporary setback. It's bound to have a profound impact on one's psyche.
Do they become more reckless, knowing they can always be brought back? Or does the knowledge of their own potential resurrection make them more cautious, more aware of the preciousness of their consciousness?
There's no easy answer. It likely varies from person to person. Some might embrace the freedom from fear, pushing the limits further than ever before. Others might be haunted by the experience of death and rebirth, becoming more contemplative, more averse to unnecessary risk.
It's a psychological and philosophical puzzle. How does one truly grapple with the concept of immortality when it's no longer a theoretical concept, but a lived reality?
It's a question that each capsuleer must confront on their own. And there's no right or wrong answer. It challenges our fundamental understanding of what it means to be human, to exist in a world where the line between life and death is blurred.
We've been focusing on the darker side of things, but let's shift gears a bit and talk about the engineering marvels that make the capsule tick. I mean, the technology involved is mind-blowing.
Absolutely. Let's start with the graviton reactor, the heart of the capsule's power system. It's incredibly efficient for its size, providing 1.15 milliwatts of power output. To put that in perspective, that's enough to power a small house all from this compact reactor in your capsule.
Wow, that's incredible. And what about those scalar semi-organic capacitor banks? They store a massive amount of energy, right?
They do. They can store a whopping 125 GJ of energy, which is essential for powering the capsule's propulsion systems, both for sublight travel and those incredible warp jumps.
It's hard to fathom the amount of energy needed to propel a capsule through the vastness of space. It's a testament to the ingenuity of the engineers who design these systems. And then there's the TDS, the system that ensures a capsuleer's consciousness is preserved even in the event of, well, a rather messy demise. How does it actually capture something as complex as consciousness?
Think of it like creating a detailed 3D model of an object. The TBS does something similar but with your consciousness. It records the state of every neuron in the brain, creating a snapshot of your neural network at that precise moment. It's all about capturing those intricate neural pathways.
So it's like sending a digital copy of your soul across the galaxy at faster than light speeds.
That's a poetic way to put it, but essentially, yes. The capsuleer's consciousness is transferred to a waiting clone, and they awaken with their memories intact, except for the moments leading up to their demise. It's a fascinating concept, a blend of cutting-edge technology and our evolving understanding of the human brain.
Speaking of interfaces, the NIA, the Neural Interface Array, is the bridge between the capsuleer's mind and the machine. It's amazing to think that neural jacks grafted to the spinal cord can translate thoughts into commands.
The NIA is a marvel of bioengineering. Those neural jacks intercept bioelectrical signals from the brain and translate them into commands for the capsule and the starship. It's a seamless integration of human and machine, a testament to the advancements in both technology and our understanding of the human brain.
So the capsuleer quite literally becomes one with their ship controlling every system with the power of thought. But what about the external interfacing system, or EIS? What role does that play in this connection?
The EIS is the communication hub between the capsule and the starship. It handles the vast amounts of data flowing back and forth, ensuring the capsuleer has full control over the ship's systems. Think of it as the pipeline for all those commands and sensory feedback.
It's fascinating how these systems work together, but it's also interesting that the EIS doesn't have access to the TBS system. What's the reasoning behind that?
It's a crucial safety measure. The TBS needs to be isolated from any potential external interference, ensuring the integrity of the neural data capture process. You wouldn't want a rogue signal accidentally triggering the TBS.
That makes sense. The integrity of the neural data is paramount. Now let's talk about the capsule's home within the starship, the capsule chamber, affectionately known as the tank. It sounds like a heavily fortified vault designed to protect the capsule from harm.
It's a fitting nickname. The capsule chamber is deep within the ship's structure, heavily armored and accessible only through a single heavily guarded causeway. It's the most secure location on any capsuleer vessel.
And it's exposed to vacuum. That seems like a rather extreme security measure. Why go to such a length?
It's a combination of security and environmental control. Vacuum exposure helps regulate the temperature and pressure within the chamber, creating a stable environment for the capsule's systems. And of course, it minimizes the risk of unauthorized access. Remember, the capsule is the most valuable asset on board.
So they're pulling out all the stops to protect it. I imagine getting into this high-security chamber is like something out of a spy movie.
You're not far off.
Huh.
There's a single access point, a heavily guarded causeway that leads from the ship's interior to the capsule chamber.
Huh.
It's designed to prevent any unauthorized intrusion with multiple blast doors, security checkpoints, and protocols in place. They're serious about protecting the capsule and its precious cargo.
And speaking of precious cargo, we can't forget about the capsuleer themselves. They're immersed in that breathable liquid suspension, the infamous pod goo. It might seem strange, but it's a highly effective way to provide life support in a microgravity environment.
The pod goo is a remarkable substance. It helps to regulate pressure and temperature, and the nanosaturated solution provides oxygen and nutrients directly to the capsuleer's bloodstream. It's like a portable ecosystem, keeping the capsuleer alive and functioning even in the most hostile conditions.
It's incredible how this technology has allowed humans to push the boundaries of exploration and survival in the vastness of space. But what about those situations where a quick escape is needed? We've touched on the emergency ejection process, but I'd love to hear more about how it works.
It's a dramatic sequence of events triggered by a distress signal from the starship. The capsule systems immediately come online, the retaining clamps release, and the control umbilicus detaches.
Yeah.
Then the capsule is literally shot out of the ship like a torpedo.
It's a violent maneuver, but necessary to escape a doomed starship. It's amazing that the capsule can withstand such a forceful ejection.
It's a testament to the capsule's durability. The multiple layers of armor and the internal shock absorption systems work together to protect the capsuleer, even in the most extreme circumstances.
It's like a high-tech escape pod, ensuring the survival of the most valuable asset on board the capsuleer's consciousness. Speaking of which, we've talked about the different capsule variations, the MK1, MK2, and MK3. Each iteration brought significant improvements driven by both technological progress and the demands of the capsuleer lifestyle.
The MK1 was groundbreaking, but it had limitations with its single capacitor bank and less efficient reactor. The MK2 addressed those issues, but technology was advancing rapidly. The MK3, with its redesigned reactor, more efficient decanting system, and improved user interface, quickly became the standard.
It's fascinating to see how capsule technology has evolved, constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible. But we also know there's a darker side to this industry, the black market for modified capsules. What can you tell us about that world?
It's a shadowy world driven by the desire for an edge for power beyond the norms. While legitimate capsule manufacturers operate under strict regulations, the black market thrives on pushing the boundaries, often with little regard for safety or ethics.
What kind of modifications are we talking about? Enhanced performance boosters, illegal neural implants, things like that.
The specifics are shrouded in secrecy, but rumors abound of capsules modified for increased speed, agility, and even resilience to damage. Imagine combat performance boosters delivered intravenously, speed and agility enhancements that push the limits of physics, and even modified NIAs that enhance neural interfaces, potentially speeding up reaction times or increasing bandwidth for controlling the ship.
It sounds incredibly dangerous. Tampering with such complex technology could have unpredictable consequences. And doing so outside of a regulated environment adds another layer of risk.
Absolutely. Black market modifications often bypass the safety protocols implemented by legitimate manufacturers, putting capsuleers at risk. It's a gamble, a high-stakes game, where the pursuit of power can come at a steep price.
It's a reminder that even in a realm of advanced technology, there are always those willing to exploit the shadows for their own gain. And with technology as powerful as capsule tech, the potential for misuse is a real concern.
It's a testament to the enduring human drive for power, for control, for the edge, that can make all the difference in a universe of endless possibilities.
And that brings us back to that fascinating question about the impact of immortality on a capsuleer's psyche. It's one thing to contemplate the idea of immortality abstractly, but it's another thing entirely to experience it firsthand.
It's a question that philosophers have grappled with for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
But in the world of Eve, it's no longer a hypothetical. It's a lived reality for every capsuleer.
We've explored the technology, the modifications, the risks, and the ethical considerations surrounding capsules. But ultimately, it's the human element that makes this topic so compelling.
It's a reminder that even in the face of groundbreaking technology, the fundamental questions about life, death, and the nature of consciousness remain at the forefront.
And that's where we'll pick up in part 3 of our deep dive. We'll delve deeper into the implications of capsule technology for the future of humanity in the Eve universe. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last 2 parts really kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of capsule technology in Eve, from the history, the actual mechanics of how it works, to the shadowy world of black market modifications. It's been quite a journey. But now let's shift our focus to the bigger picture. What does this technology, this ability to cheat death, really mean for humanity in the Eve universe?
It's a question with no easy answers.
Okay.
I mean, we've touched on the psychological and philosophical implications, but it goes even deeper than that. I mean, think about the societal impact. How does a civilization function when it's elite? The capsuleers are essentially immortal.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's bound to create a unique dynamic, right? We've seen how capsuleer immortality shapes warfare and exploration. But what about the day-to-day lives of capsuleers? Does this constant awareness of their second life affect their relationships, their sense of purpose, their outlook on the world?
It's a fascinating area to explore. Imagine living with the knowledge that death is just a temporary setback. Does it make you more reckless? Or does it instill a deeper appreciation for life? Does it create a sense of detachment knowing that your loved ones will age and pass on while you remain?
It's almost like capsuleers are living in a different dimension of time compared to the rest of humanity.
Exactly. And that separation is bound to have consequences both positive and negative. On the one hand, capsuleers are able to dedicate themselves to long-term goals, pushing the boundaries of knowledge and exploration without the constraints of a finite lifespan.
Yeah, that makes sense. Imagine the scientific breakthroughs that could be achieved when researchers have centuries, even millennia, to pursue their work.
Precisely. And think about the impact on leadership and governance. Capsuleers could provide a level of continuity and wisdom that's simply not possible for non-capsuleers.
But there's a potential downside to that, isn't there? What happens when power becomes concentrated in the hands of a few who live for centuries, potentially shaping the destiny of nations for generations?
It's a valid concern. The potential for corruption and stagnation is real. Without the natural cycle of life and death, new ideas and perspectives might struggle to emerge.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? The immortality granted by capsule technology has the potential to both elevate and hinder humanity's progress.
It all comes down to how individuals and societies choose to use this extraordinary power. Will capsuleers embrace their unique position to guide humanity toward a brighter future? Or will they succumb to the temptations of power and become a force for stagnation?
It's almost like a grand sociological experiment is playing out on a galactic scale.
That's a great way to put it, and the outcome of that experiment is still being written.
We've talked a lot about the impact of capsule technology on capsuleers themselves, but what about the wider implications for the rest of humanity? How do non-capsuleers view these seemingly immortal beings?
It's a complex relationship, fraught with a mixture of awe, envy, fear, and resentment. To some capsuleers are heroes, pioneers pushing the boundaries of human potential. To others, they represent a privileged elite detached from the realities of everyday life.
Yeah, it's easy to imagine how this divide could lead to social unrest and conflict.
Absolutely. And the tensions are only exacerbated by the fact that capsuleer immortality is intrinsically tied to wealth and power.
Yeah.
Access to cloning technology training and the resources required to become a capsuleer is simply beyond the reach of most people.
It creates a system where immortality itself becomes a measure of inequality.
It's a stark reminder that even in a future with such advanced technology, fundamental social and economic disparities can persist.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and it's clear that capsule technology has had a profound impact on every facet of life in the EVE universe. It's reshaped warfare, accelerated exploration, and sparked philosophical debates about the very nature of life and death.
It's a testament to the power of technology to transform civilizations, but it also highlights the enduring complexities of the human experience.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like we're left with more questions than answers.
That's the beauty of a topic like this. It challenges us to think critically, to grapple with the implications of technology on a societal and personal level.
And perhaps that's the most valuable takeaway from our exploration of capsule technology. It's not just about the mechanics of how it works, but about the deeper questions it raises about who we are, where we're headed, and what it means to be human in a universe of infinite possibilities.
We've only scratched the surface here, and we encourage you to continue exploring this fascinating subject. Delve deeper into the lore, the stories, the personal accounts of capsuleers, and ponder the profound implications of this game-changing technology.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic, ready to unravel more mysteries and spark those aha moments. Until then, keep those minds curious, keep exploring, and as always, fly safe.